It's important because it's going to eliminate a lot of import duties and tariffs, especially because US is our biggest exporting partner. So net trading like surplus of Vietnam to US is about 100 million last year. So if we can reduce the tax, the imports, duties and tariff, both sides can make a lot more profit. The biggest advantage of being recognized as a market economy is to eliminate all the tariff and all the duties and being recognized as open business democracy environment.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave. You don't want to miss Geeks on a Beach, the unique premier startup conference in the region. Join us from November 13th to 15, 2024 at J Park Island Resort in Mactan, Cebu. This event brings together tech enthusiasts, investors, and entrepreneurs for 3 days of workshops, talks, and networking. Register at geeksonabeach.com and use code BRAVEC for a 45% discount for the first 10 registrations and 35% off for the next ones.
Hey, good to see you.
Hi, Jeremy. Good to see you again.
I know, this time look at quite a fancy background, right?
Yeah, I'm excited. Amazing view.
I know, instead of like home studio or
Yeah.
Zoom, we're off to play a poker party for VCs in Singapore that we organized at Brave. And now we just happen to have this view in the background. So,
Yeah, I'm surprised you mentioned like poker party pretty naturally.
Oh, really? It's like
Yeah.
communism is not
Yeah,
a
we
fan of
not-
like gambling and poker.
We actually not allowed to gamble.
Oh,
like
okay.
casino for Vietnamese, we are not allowed to enter casino.
Anywhere in the world?
In
Just
Vietnam, yeah. So you need to bring foreign passport if you want to enter a casino in Vietnam. So it was a bit weird for me to see you say it out
I
loud.
mean, I think the fun part is obviously that Marina Bay Sands, that's a casino, right? I mean, the hotel, the casino. So Singapore gambling is legal for both locals. Obviously, there's a small tax, I guess.
For
Locals,
right?
correct. And obviously, I guess VC is quite Americanized culture as well, right? It's
Yeah.
American LPs, American flow. So obviously, All In, the technology podcast, is all about a poker
Yes,
reference.
yeah.
So Silicon Valley is actually quite common to play poker in those tech circles. Yeah. Oh well. So today we want to talk about Vietnam. A lot of things happened. So first of all, RIP. Could you share a little bit more about the transition?
Yeah, so about 3 weeks ago, our former party chief or general secretary of the Communist Party passed away at 80 years old. So we have to host a state funeral, caused a lot of mourning and sadness among the entire country. So we had the state funeral for 3 days. Pretty much everywhere you go, the flag has to be tied in a black tissue. And some of the business actually even stopped like posting story. Instead, they post like a story to pay respect to the general who passed away. Yeah, so it was a pretty sad time for the country. But briefly after his pass away, the government quickly moved on to the succession and elected the new general secretary who we have been discussed. His name is Tô Lâm. So he stepped up from Ministry of Public Defense to now General Secretary of Vietnam.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that struck me was that when he passed away, nobody was surprised. All my Vietnamese friends were not surprised. Now, everyone else felt like they didn't know or they were surprised that was happening. So it sounds like people knew for a while.
Yeah, I think people, especially Vietnamese, knew for a while, but as freedom of speech and freedom of press are not as popular among like Vietnamese. So they try to limit a lot of news about rumor about his death, but actually everyone knew that he has a stroke and he wasn't able to really show up in a lot of important meetings. So the power planning and succession has been planned out for a couple of years now. That's why we see a lot of anti-corruption campaign. And Tô Lâm, the current party chief, was the general behind all of this anti-burning furnace campaign.
Yeah, I think the big surprise, and I think something I realized, was that we had ascribed the burning furnace, at least for myself, to the predecessor. But actually it turns out that Tô Lâm has been like pushing this for the past few years because he's the successor and the next in line. So I think that was something that was maybe less clear to me 1 or 2 months ago compared to today.
Yeah, well, it's because we cannot announce publicly when it hasn't happened. So yeah, we have to wait for the country to finish mourning and pay respect to our former party chief first, then move on to announcing like, hey, we have a new party chief and he's most likely going to be also the general secretary in 2026, which is when we have the most important like general meeting for the Communist Party.
And you know what's interesting? He seems to be making quite a lot of big moves recently. So I think the first thing he did was he flew to China as his first official visit. And last time we were discussing the bamboo strategy, right? We were trying to be neutral between the US, between Russia, between China because of historical ties. But it was interesting that his first visit was to China and then Xi Jinping called him a friend. And so it was interesting to hear that. And it was also about 16 deals were signed. So commercial and logistics.
So it was really sudden and fast change. So as soon as he was elected, the Russian government and Putin flew in to visit Vietnam. So that's the first kind of big move, big visit. And secondly, Mr. Tô Lâm, he's now in China. And that is his first official foreign visit, and he chose China. That means a lot. That means we are re-emphasizing that relationship between Vietnam and China is still utmost important, and we choose to still respect this Vietnam and China foreign policy. And that's why the two countries just signed about 14 agreements among investment, public infrastructures, education, exchange. So the Vietnamese government actually brought a big entourage alongside with Tô Lâm in this visit. He also visited Gwangju beside Beijing. It's because the infrastructure planning, it's supposed to be connecting like Cantonese region to Vietnam. And in the future, the two regions will be linked by a high-speed train, which only take like a couple hours. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because it builds on the previous podcast we talked about, which is that the primary relationship between Vietnam and China obviously is one of the logistics. Infrastructure upgrade is one angle. And second, of course, is that Vietnam and China has gone to war multiple times in the past. And one was right after the US-Vietnam War. So obviously, maintaining peace and security is a big topic, right? So I think, honestly, from my perspective, it makes sense. Like Vietnam and China, you're literally neighbors on the border with each other. It does feel like the natural first country to talk to. I'm not sure who else they could really have gone to as their first visit. I think going to the US for the first visit so far away would have been honestly seen as an insult, I think, by the China government.
I would guess so, but I think we also got punished by the US. So a few days ago, the US rejected our request to upgrade it to be market economy. So we are now still classified as non-market economy. And I think the whole world, they only listed about like 10 to 12 countries that don't have the status of market economy. So North Korea, Russia, China. So I think in a way, by not visiting US first, we were punished by the US that like, we are not recognized as a market economy.
And what does getting recognized as a market economy get you, or why is it important?
Yeah, it's important because it's going to eliminate a lot of import duties and tariffs, especially because US is our biggest exporting partner. So net trading like surplus of Vietnam to US is about 100 million last year. So if we can reduce the tax, the imports, duties and tariff, both sides can make a lot more profit. So the biggest advantage of being recognized as a market economy is to eliminate all the tariff and all the duties and being recognized as a open business democracy like environment. Yeah. So it's very, I think in the world, there are only like about 10 countries that are not recognized as market economy.
It's interesting because if you look at the US elections right now, obviously there's a big push by the Democrat Republicans. And what's interesting is that the Republicans, especially Trump, not fans of Vietnam as a trading partner. So I think they're looking at that trading surplus that you just mentioned as a sign that there's imbalance in the trading relationship. Right. That's one. And I think that's one angle. And then the second angle, of course, is that Trump has singled out and said that a lot of Chinese companies manufacturing in Vietnam and like routing through Vietnam still into America. I think the part that both sides are okay with, of course, is a Western manufacturer moving out of China and relocating to Vietnam. That feels like they're okay. But I think they're not okay with the Chinese manufacturers like manufacturing in Vietnam.
Yeah, so I think by not recognizing our economy as non-market, I think they are discouraging the Western factory to move to Vietnam. So it's not a win-win situation. But on the Chinese manufacturing diversifying out to Vietnam, it has already happened. So the most kind of frequent conversation I have recently in Vietnam are with the Chinese investor and Chinese factory owners. Yeah, all of them have already made the decision and some already made the investment to expand and build out factory in Vietnam, including like BYD, consumer good I can name of like Media, Miniso, Tsing Sao, the beer group. Yeah. They already have made like extreme investment and they're not like making a profit in Vietnam right now because they just entered the market or about to enter the market. But talking to the country manager of this company, they all have kind of plan and firm commitment to invest in Vietnam.
Yeah, I think it makes sense that it's easy for a lot of the Chinese companies in the south, for example, to move into the north of Vietnam. A lot of cultural similarity, infrastructure build out. And I think the south of Vietnam, from what I've heard, is a little bit more like receptive to American like cultural heritage or people flows. And then on a parallel track, I've also heard from my Indonesian folks that a lot of Western MNCs were looking at Vietnam, but now they're looking more towards Indonesia, I don't know, China plus one or China plus two, whatever you want to call it. But like you said, I think at first, Vietnam was a clear number one for them. Yeah. And then now they're like, okay, maybe we still do something in Vietnam, but we need to do something in Indonesia.
I think there are more reasons in addition to that. So for example, NVIDIA, they were clearly wanted to do more than just a partnership with FPT, but the problem is that our government did not respond fast enough and did not say like, yes, we welcome you fast enough. So they have to, and including Apple as well, shift some of the new investment to Indonesia. So policy, also in terms of workforce labor, we have about 100 million compared to almost 300 million people in Indonesia. And if you talk about like NVIDIA in the chip sector, we still lack a lot of hardware engineers. Yeah. Mentioning like particularly hardware, because over the past 30 years, we've over-focused our education to software. That's why FPT became so big. But now we realize we have this gap in hardware. So we don't have enough of hardware engineers to prepare for the NVIDIA investment. And also the third reason is the power supply. Yeah, that's still, we haven't solved for that yet.
Well, you solved it this year. You didn't have any blackouts. You used a lot of coal. So, too bad for carbon emissions. But last year we discussed it, there were like literally brownouts and blackouts in Vietnam last year. And then this year the government at least solved it by saying let's burn as much coal and import as much as it. But I think what's interesting is that actually you reminded me that I think Gita Sahir, who's also the Indonesia co-host of Brave, was discussing about the Indonesia reaction. And I think like MNCs, there's an interesting contrast for the policies, right? So, Vietnam, like you said, very focused high on education, 100 million, very to foreign direct investments, and actually very few protectionist measures from what I can tell. But for Indonesia, is enacting more protectionist measures, impose a 1,200% import tariff on Chinese-made goods. Obviously, education is not as high investments compared to Vietnam. Obviously, it's separated into multiple islands, so it's not like a contiguous landmass, right? So I think some interesting contrasts, I would say, between Indonesian policy at a government level and the Vietnamese government. Also, to some extent, the directions where they're going, right? Indonesia is a little bit more like protectionist versus Chinese imports. Versus Vietnam is just taking in both Chinese imports and foreign direct investment.
Yeah, maybe that's why Tô Lâm has to visit China first thing when he was crowned. Because ideally, if we want more investment from China, we should also welcome their businesses such as BYD or Miniso or Media coming to Vietnam without tariff. But I would say in terms of pricing, the BYD car, for example, is still a bit more expensive than VinFast per se. So I think they're like an open competition for now. Yeah.
In Singapore, the BYD car is very affordable compared to the other electric cars.
Like
Tesla and everything. So because of the less of the import taxes that America imposed on BYD and other Chinese manufacturers. So it allows the Tesla to have that price differentiation while also having the features. But actually in Singapore, I was just looking at the BYD car and I was like, whoa. Let's just say that I looked at it and then I was just like, should we switch to electric and blah? And I don't think the answer is not yet, because I think also for electric cars, like every year they get better quite significantly. So actually, the longer you wait, there's some software upgrades and all the other stuff. But yeah, I think it was really the gap is very price competitive. And I think you see a lot of BYD cars in Singapore these days as well.
So that's why I'm also surprised to see like Vietnam kind of welcomes Chinese competitors. You can see now like BYD advertisement everywhere. They're just about to open a huge showroom in Hanoi. I didn't see the showroom in Ho Chi Minh City yet, but I saw a big one in Hanoi. My friend in the car industry also working with BYD quite aggressively now.
Yeah, I think VinFast would have a tough time competing with BYD. BYD obviously has a huge advantage in terms of scale, right? Obviously, the China domestic market. But also, I think the Chinese EV supplier base is so strong. So for example, I was just looking at the LiDAR, which is the laser detection hardware manufacturer, right? It's a module. Yeah. And literally like most of it is manufactured in China. So, actually to install that in the car vehicles,
Talking about car, there's an interesting story to show like Mr. Tô Lâm is also pretty pro-business, even though he's coming from a public defense background and more like national security background. So Mercedes-Benz in Vietnam has a joint venture with a local firm in Vietnam, and they lease for the land, for the assembling land, already expired. And they couldn't get the local authority to renew the contract. And he was really like publicly criticized the local government that they are not being business friendly and fast moving enough. And this joint venture should be renewed. So he's like talking openly that even though the anti-corruption is ongoing, we still have to push for economic growth and pro-business. So that could be a good side on the story, because a lot of investors also ask me what his policy is going to be, and is he a bit like too protectionism coming from a public defense background.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you don't have a fast-growing GDP per capita, the way China has done in terms of investments, then you can do all kinds of short-term moves, but over a 10 to 20-year time frame, then China can outcompete over that time frame. So from my perspective, I think if you're a neighbor with China and you're not growing as fast as China industrially, then I think you're just falling behind, and then it's very hard to keep that space. So I think, to me, economic growth for Vietnam is not just for economic growth and standard of living. It's actually a national security requirement, because if you don't grow, how do you keep up? Yeah, I think what's interesting is that when we see this new phase, what do you think are potentially some policy or administration differences or similarities?
Just he's still very newly in position, so I don't really know what exactly on his agenda. But I think for the near future term, it's still about power consolidation. He's learning what Xi Jinping has done in China, so he's consolidated and make sure to remove the former power. I think he's still authoritarian style.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, I always remember this interesting thing, which is people are like, hey, democracy has multiple parties competing for power, right? And then they're like, a Communist Party only has one party. And I'm like, no. Within the Communist Party, there are multiple factions and multiple parties within a Communist Party, just under that banner. So I think the tricky part is just like, how do people sort out those differences as well?
And one of the first few days, his policy was pro-business, while the anti-corruption is ongoing. So how can he manage both at the same time? I think it would be a very challenging task.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I've reflected on this. It's like 15 years ago, like if you were in China, you knew that, and the word on the street was that officials were taking bribes, right? I mean, there's literally people would discuss it. And so international students would discuss it, locals would discuss it. It was like a known norm. And I just think that no matter how much growth they can get, supposedly because you can incentivize officials using these backdoor channels, I think it's just not sustainable for a country over the medium long term. Because like at the end of the day, no matter what, for a government, you want a government to represent you, right? And if you feel like the government is representing you because of somebody else paid more through a red packet, I don't think the government can stay strong.
Yeah, I hope he's more pragmatic, especially about economic development, given that his cabinet is very defense focused. None of them came from Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Investment. They all came from very public defense and army type of background. So I do understand like why the international investors have their concern, but based on the encouragement of the Mercedes joint ventures and like he's really saying we have to keep the economic growth going, I do think that he's very pragmatic about the importance of business and economic growth.
When we think about this new administration, obviously there's also the relationships, not just with China, but also the neighbors, right? So Cambodia, Thailand, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. So I'm just curious, do you think is it too early to tell? Do you think there's any contours?
I think too early to tell, and also it's not his first in the agenda right now.
That's true. His number one agenda is China visit, right?
Russia visit first. Like Russia went to Vietnam and then he went to China, and I think it will be US.
Yes, true. So yeah, so it's gotta be like,
I gotta balance the big superpower first.
Just like the Korean drama again.
Yeah. And then yeah.
No, actually, it's true. I mean, you're right. So number one is China and Russia, and then number two is the US.
Yeah, I would say 1, 2 should still be US, China. Russia, they came to.
So it's okay. So because we travel in to have that meeting, and technically also they came in during that time period. Technically, all the moves hadn't happened and all that other stuff as well. So I think it's an interesting time. Yeah. I guess I'm curious, but obviously now it's August and then now is this time period. We'll hit it towards December. Do the Vietnamese have holidays in November, December?
Actually, we follow the same holiday with China.
Yeah.
So we celebrate Chinese New Year. So the slow month would be January, where we're heading to Chinese New Year, or we call Lunar New Year. So December will still be a busy month. January and February is when things are more quiet.
Gotcha. Because there's Singapore as well. Singapore celebrates both Christmas and Chinese New Year. So sometimes they joke like December to February, nothing gets done.
Yeah, I would say January or like the month of the Lunar New Year is where nothing get done in Vietnam. But also interesting like culture. So right now in lunar calendar is the ghost month. So like B2B contracts are not getting done because they don't want to sign in this month. Yeah.
Because right now is the Mid-Autumn Festival.
Before. So the month before,
Yeah. People are burning the paper money.
Yes, yeah. So this month is where like the ghosts and the dead people are like co-living with us. So it's a taboo to do a new business or new contract this month.
I did not know that. But definitely Singapore does do a lot of like the Hungry Ghost Festival.
Yeah, Hungry Ghost.
Of like burning the paper money. So people are like busy.
Same.
It's like government approved buckets to burn your stuff and everything, your paper money and everything.
So it lasts about like 10 more days. The Mid-Autumn Festival should be fun, yeah. Okay, but we don't have a day off.
You don't have a day off? Singapore doesn't have one either. So, but we're going to have mooncakes everywhere. People are going to give it to one another as gifts. And coming up also is like the upcoming is the Super Returns, the F1. Are you going to be here?
Yeah, I will be here again.
We'll do it again here. Instead we're like running around for all the Super Return, BC meetings, everything. So what, you're going to be here for the F1? I think F1 is like early September. Then for horse, there's also Token 2049.
Yeah, so I think I will be here the week of Token 2049. Super Return, I think this year is a bit later.
Yeah, it's a bit later, yeah.
So I'm not sure if I'm coming.
Yeah, on that note, we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.